Welcome to the Mern Chat app project. So in this video, you will learn how to build a chat application using the Mern stack, so MongoDB, Express, React, and Node.js from scratch. If you are looking to improve your JavaScript skills and especially to learn the Mern stack, so this project is definitely going to help you. It's a full stack project, so with user authentication, where you can as well send and receive notifications and messages coming from the backend. So I'll show you how the application works. So first of all, as a visitor, so you will look at you'll have access to this page. You won't have access to the chat, and you can as well start by creating an account if you don't have one, or just by logging to your account. Now you have here, okay, you can create, let's say, a new user by saying Jendo and say Jendo example.com with a password, right? And then you need to choose an, let's say, a profile picture here, and I'll show you how you can upload the profile picture. So we'll use a Cloudinary for that, and it's going to be saved in the database. For example, it says that it already exists. Let's say Jendo2 example.com, and it's going to create the account using MongoDB. And once you create your account, so you have access to the chat, okay, where you can receive messages from users, or you can have access to the room. So you have tech rooms, you have the tech room, the general room, finance and crypto. So you can add new rooms. I'll show you how to do it. And when I send a message by saying hello everyone, it's Jane, so it gives you the date and the time. All right, so today, and it gives you the time. Now other users will receive notifications. Okay, so if I go to the tech room, so as Jonathan, I'll see that Jane sent a message. So I can as well send a direct message to Jane by saying, hey Jane, welcome, okay, to the chat, and Jane will receive a notification. So if I submit, so you go back to Jane's profile, and you see that you have this notification here. All right, so if I refresh the page, it's still there. And even if I log out and come back, so log in, you will see that it's still there. Okay, so this is done using Redux, okay, Redux toolkit and the local storage as well. So I'll show you how basically you can build this from scratch. All right, so if that's something that you are interested in, if you are excited, without further ado, let's get started. Now the first thing is to create our folder. So I'm opening my terminal, and I'm going to cd into my desktop, and I'm going to create the Mern Chat folder and cd into my Mern Chat. Okay, let's clear this out. And now I'm going to create two folders. So the first folder is, so create, let's say npx create React app, the latest, and I can just say Mern Chat frontend. This is going to create the front-end application for me, and at the same time I can open a new tab from my shell, from my shell, and I can just mkdir for the backend. So Mern Chat backend. Yes, mkdir. So it creates the front end and the back end. So while it's creating the back end, the front end, so let's go to the back end, and I'm going to cd, I can just say atom, so Mern Chat backend. So open it with my atom editor. If you don't have this command, you have to set it up on Mac, but if you don't have it, just open it with your text editor. Right guys, so now we are on the backend. We are going to install a bunch of packages. Okay, so I'm going to say npm init -y to create my package.json file like this, and this is where we'll create, or where we'll install our packages. So npm install, npm I, we need to have nodemon express. So bcrypt, I'm going to install all the dependencies at once. Bcrypt helps you manage the password, it helps you crypt the password. So we have the course, okay, we have .env, mongoose for the database. So we have socket.io, right, and we have the validator. And now in our package.json, we see that it's installed these dependencies. The next step is to create our server. So server, not this. So let's create a new file here by calling it server.js. So our server.js will manage our server. So we need to say here const express equals, so we require express. We instantiate our express by saying const app equals, so express. The next thing is to have our rooms, so const rooms equals, so we just have general, tech room, finance, and crypto. And we need to have course, so course equals, we say require course, and we say, so app.use, we say express that URL encoded, and we say just extend it to true. This is for being able to receive data from the front end as well. App.use, say express.json. Let's use the course here, so app.use course, okay, so that we can allow the front end and the back end to communicate. And we'll create now our server by saying here const server equals, we require the HTTP create server. So the HTTP is coming from NodeJS by default, and we create the server with our app. Let's create the port by saying const port equals, so 5001, and we say const IO equal, this is for socket, so we need to say require socket.io, and it's going to be with the server we just created, so that the server can handle sockets. And we do the course here for the socket, WebSockets, and we say origin, so HTTP, our front end, so localhost 3000, and we say methods, okay, from now, so get and post. Okay, so a WebSocket is a way to communicate between the server and the client. So if you have done already some work, or if you understand the server, what it is, the server can only receive and send back data. So also it can only send back the data after it received the data. After it received, I mean, a command. But with WebSockets, the server can individually, okay, just send data. Okay, it doesn't need to receive some commands from the server. I mean, from the client, it can just send data straight to the client, and the client can as well send data to the server. So it's like a two-edged communication. That's why we use WebSockets here to create or to send messages back and forth. All right, so now we have the server. We can listen for a port by saying server that listen to our port here, and once we have it listening to the port. We just want to have our console logging, listening to port. Okay, we say the port here. So now let's use NodeMon to launch our server. So let's remove this test script, and we can just say start. It's going to be node server.js. This is the start command, and we need to have a dev command for development, and we'll use NodeMon server.js. NodeMon allows us to just refresh everything when we make a change, so we don't have to restart the server. So now we can use the command by saying npm run dev, the dev command. It should start the server, but we are having some issues here. Let's see. It doesn't find the module. Okay, so actually the server, I think we put it, yeah, we put it inside the node modules. Should be outside the node modules. Let's move it outside. Okay, and now we can try again. And it says listening on port to port 5001, which means our server is working. Now back to our terminal. So we can see that the front end is ready. We can just say here code to open it with VS Code. So Mern Chat front end. If it doesn't work for you, just open it with VS Code. It's that easy. Okay, so in our VS Code, so I'm going to open the app.js like this and open my terminal. So I need to say npm start to start our server. And now we have here the React application. So we'll start with just cleaning up this app.js. So I'm going to remove everything. And let's just put something here. So just a regular div from now. And say here app. Okay. So we'll install a bunch of dependencies, and the first one is React Router. So React Router DOM. So we need to have this to allow multiple pages for our chat application. So npm install React Router DOM. And while it's installing, so I'm opening my browser and I'm going to open React Bootstrap. So I'm going to use React Bootstrap for this project, and so click on get started and just copy this to install React Bootstrap and its dependencies. So paste it like this, and we will import. So after we import the style sheet, so copy this and put it in your index.js. So here we have index.js here, and just paste it. Okay, so from that point we can now build our pages, our different pages. I'm going to create first of all our navigation. So in my src I'll have a pages folder, and I'll have on the same level, so still in src components, and in my pages, so I'll create the home page. I need to have another one, so the chat page. So let's say here RFCE, so it's just a shortcut. You can have this shortcut by just searching for ES7 in your extensions. ES7. So this one, install it, and then you will have access to RFCE, which means React Functional Component, with an export like this. So the home, you have the home, the chat as well. So RFCE, say chat. Let's create a login page. So RFCE again, and the sign up page. So sign up. So these are the pages we need for this application. Next, we will have our navigation component. So here in my components page, I create navigation.js. So RFC again, and this will hold our navigation. So for the navigation, so back to React Router DOM. So I can just search for navigation. Let's actually search for here navbar and copy this first one. So we can just return here that component and say import. So we'll import from React Bootstrap. So navbar, so navbar, you have the container and you have the button, and this navigation we need to have it in our app. So I'm going to import it here. So instead of having a div, you can just have so navigation like this, and it's coming from the components. Okay, so this is the first step. Now that we have installed React Router Bootstrap, React Router DOM, so we'll use that to create our different pages. So here, let's say import. We'll import from React Router DOM, and so we have the browser router, we have the routes, and we have route. And coming here, so let's remove this div and replace it with a browser router. The next is, so below the navigation we'll have our routes, so routes, and each route will be a page. It's actually here self-closing, and the path is going to be so the home page, and the element will be our component. So we say home, make sure you import it. So the home page has its own path. We have as well so the login and the sign up page. We can say login, sign up, point to the login, and it's pointing to the sign up. Let's build the chat. So chat here, and we say chat. So these are our routes. Okay, and you see here I'm having the navigation outside the routes because the navigation won't change. Now if you open the app again, so we have something we need to import in navigation. So we have here nav drop down, and now you have it. Okay, so home link drop down, and if I go to /login, so we should have the login page here. Okay, so now let's connect the navigation with our pages, and for that we need to install so npm I React Router Bootstrap for routing, and this will help us connect the links with the pages. I'm going to import here, so import from React Router Bootstrap, and I'll import link container. This link container will help me have this routing. So for the login, for example, so this is so the login. Yeah, say login, and instead of having this nav link, let's remove the href and just have it so in between link container like this, and the link container will have now a to attribute, and that will point to /login. Do the same for the chat. So I'm just going to copy this, paste it below, and we have the chat, and we say chat. Right, so let's see now. So you have login and chat. Okay, so they are pointing to the pages. You see here it's changing. So chat and login. Let's now move them on the right side. So we say, instead of ME, we say MS. It's moved on the right side. And let's remove this link here. Okay. Right, so now we have it like this. And for the home page here, it should actually point to the home page. So the home page here, it should actually point to the home page. So we are going to replace it with the logo and then make it point to the home page. So here, instead of saying React Bootstrap, we'll have an image, and then I'll just take the image. I have an image folder here, so it's called logo, and I'll just put it in my folder. So copy it and here paste it, create a new folder, call it assets, and I'll just paste it there. Okay, let's do it again. Alright, so now I have my assets and I have my logo, and the logo I just took it from canva.com. You can create any logo you want with that website. So I'll create here the logo. I'll import it actually by saying import logo from. So it's just assets and logo.png, and now we can have a link container that wraps our brand. So having this the href, let's remove the href, and we'll have an image. So with the source, so src equals, we say the logo, and let's give it some style. So width 50 and height 50, and the link container will go to, so to just equals / for the home page, and now we have the logo. Okay, going to the home page. The next thing is to build those pages. So for the home page, let's start with the home page. Let's remove this div. So we'll import, so import from React Bootstrap. We need to import row, column, and the button, and let's build the home page. So it will just be a row that will return here, and we'll have a column. So for medium screens, we'll say 6 and above. So class name, we'll say dflex. This is a Bootstrap class name, so flex direction as well, Bootstrap class name. So column, align items, center, justify, content center. So we have a div with some text that says share the world with friends, with your friends. There's some text and some paragraphs that says chat up, so lets you connect with the world. And below we'll have a link container, and it's going to go to the chat, and it's going to be a button inside. So variant equals success, and we'll just say get started with some icon. So some icon here, class name, say FA, comments, so home message icon for the class. So the icon will take it from a CDN, and I'll show you how to do this. Alright, so I'm now in CDN.js, okay, and just libraries/font also, and this is what I take it. So just copy the link tag back to my application. So in public index.html, you can paste it. So let's paste it here. Okay, and now we should have it. So you can just see what's going on. Console. Right, so here the icon should be within the button. Let's paste it here inside the button, and now you have it. Okay, refresh. Now you have the text and the icon. Now below here, below this column, we'll have another column for the image. So we say md equals 6 and some class name that we just call, so home underscore bg for background image, like this. And we'll create a css, home.css, and let's link it. So import home.css. So for the home.css, so we can target here our home underscore bg, and we'll give it some background image. I'll take the background images from unsplash.com, and you can do this as well. So background image, say URL, paste my image, give it some height, 92, so 92 VH, background position, say center, background size, so cover, background repeat, we say no repeat, we say overflow X hidden. So the home bg, and we should have something. We have the image, as you can see. Let's just target the home message icon and give it some margin left, 10 pixels. So display inline block. So we have some image, some margin here, and that's it. So this is the home page, and once we click the button, it should go to the chat. The next thing is to create a login page. So in the login page, we'll have here a form. So back to the React Bootstrap. So let's search for forms, and we just copy this, and let's just have it here. And for the login page, we'll have a container. This container will wrap the form like this, and let's remove this. So let's say return the container like this. Okay, so we'll have a row. So we say here row, and that row will wrap our form again. Right, so this is the row, and we have some column. So a left column and a right column, another column here. This right column will wrap the form now again. Okay, and now this left column will give it a MD5 and some class name equals, we say login underscore bg, and the right one, so md equals 7, class name we say dflex, line items, center say justify content center, and flex direction say column. Okay, so now this login bg, we can create a css by saying So login.css, and you can just say login bg. Again, I'll take my images from Unsplash. So we say background image URL, paste my image. You can just look at here what we did already for home. Let's take it again, paste it there. And we can look at now the login page. So we need to import things. The login page. So let's import the form and the row, and we have the button as well. So we say button. Okay, so we have the form, but we don't have the image. So let's see why. Yep, so we need to have here import. So say login.css, and yeah, so now you have the image. Let's make the form a little bit larger by let's give it some style. So width is going to be 80%, and we can say some max width. Let's say 500. Now the form should be a bit larger. Let's remove the check me out here. Okay, and now you have a basic form. So this is the basic form. So let's actually say login here. And right below the button, so we'll have a div, and this div is going to be, so class name py4, some padding vertical, and let's have a paragraph, and this paragraph will have a class name of text center, and we can just say don't have an account. And now we'll use the link, and this link is coming from React Router DOM. Okay, like this. Yeah, and we say should go to the sign up, and we say sign up. Okay, and now we have this link that goes to the sign up, and let's now build a sign up. So for the sign up, it's about the same, so I can just copy this whole thing here, paste it here. So we'll return the whole thing and our import as well. So let's import this, paste it here. Okay, and let's see now if I go to the sign up, we are on the sign up, you see, but because we have the same thing, that's why. So we'll change some things here. Instead of saying login, right, we say sign up, and I'm going to actually put this down below, so it's going to change the configuration. And now for the sign up bg, so we create sign up .css, and we say here sign up bg, so background image, so we say URL, another one, so paste this image here, and the same for the login. So I'm just going to copy these attributes here, paste them below. Now the sign up page, let's see, probably haven't linked the two files. Let's open the sign up and say here import the sign up.css, and now you have the sign up page, the sign up image. So we can have here, okay, some image, like an image, the profile image, as well change some things here, because we will have the name here. So we'll have another from group. Let me just copy this. Actually, let's copy this. So, and we'll say name. Let's remove this. Say form basic. Doesn't mean anything for our app, but like this. And we have type text, placeholder. You can say your name. Let's remove this. And let's add some title here from h1 that says create account with class name, so text center. And down below we'll have a div, and this is where the image will appear, so the profile picture. So class name, you can say sign up, so profile, so pick container, and we'll have some image here, so image, with some src, and class name is going to be, so sign up, profile, pick. Right, so this here we need to have an image, and I have an image for that. It's just a bot image, so I have it here in my chat. So this is going to be my bot image, my default image. So let's say here, just put it into my assets folder. Again, you can just take it from Canva, not Canva, but Unsplash. So we say here bot, rename it to bot. You can import it here. So import bot img from, so our assets, and we say bot.jpg. And now the image will be here, so we say bot by default, and we need to have down below here something, so a label, so HTML4 is going to be image upload. This is the icon, the plus icon. When you click on it, it's going to help you upload an image. So class name, we say image upload label, and we'll have here an icon, right? So this icon, class name, FAS, FA, you can say plus circle, and we say add picture icon. Okay, now we need to have, actually here should be bot image img. We need to style this image because it's going to be a very big image. So back to our sign up.css. Say here sign up, profile pic container. We give it some width of 100 pixels, height of 100 pixels, margin we say 0 auto, and we say position to be relative, and the same sign up profile pic only this time, width 100 pixels, border radius we say 50%, border we say 2 pixels, solid gray, object fit, we say cover, and height 100 pixels, and add picture icon. So position, let's give it absolute. Can have bottom 0, right 10 pixels. Color, let's give it green. Background, let's say white. Cursor, let's say pointer, and we can have z index of 99. And let's see what we have. So you have this nice image, and when you have the cursor here, okay, so this is the image upload. It's not actually working yet, because we need to have, so below the label we need to have some input, and this input will be of type file. So ID, let's say image upload, it's hidden, and we can only accept, so let's say accept, it's going to be image/png and image/jpeg. You can say on change equals, and this is where we'll have a function, and we'll call that function validate image. So we create a function here, we call it validate img, and we can say here validate img from now. So let's add the parentheses, and now once you click, it's opening, right? It's opening your files so that you can select an image. Okay. Now below here, the button, instead of having the login here, we can say the sign up, we can say login, redirect to the login, and here as well login, and we can say here already have an account. If it is the case, we'll have the login, and let's say here just login but create account. Okay, so we have the name, email address, and we have the password here. Now we can add the state to our sign up and login page, so we can send this, the email, so everything about the user, we can send it back to the backend. Now for that, so back to our sign up, we need to have here some state, so const email, set email, so use state, the same, so we can say use state, const password, set password, use state again, const name, so set name, use state, empty string. And now we can go, so here for the attributes, and define here on change, and we can just say let's say set name, target value, and the same for the email, set email, say target value, and the same for the password. So set password, target value, and the value itself for the password is going to be our password coming from the state, and the same for the email, so value equals email, and here we say value equals name. So this is what we call a controlled form. So the form is controlled by the actual state. All right, and the form itself so needs to have a function on submit that's going to handle the sign up, and we create the handle sign up like this. It takes an event, and we say e that prevent default to prevent the form from submitting, because we need to do some checks. Prevent default. The first thing is if there is no image. Now we can have here the image upload state. So const image, set image, use state. We say no, there is no image by default. Const, so uploading img for the state. Set uploading img equals, we say use state is going to be false. We don't upload any image by default. And const the preview image preview after we upload it. Set image preview use state, and we say no, there is no image preview by default. Okay, now for the validate image, we need to just only allow images that are less than 1 megabyte. So we can say const file, it takes an event here, equals e target files, and we take the first one. That's how we access the image. If the file that size greater than, so 104.8576, this is 1 megabyte, we just return with an alert, and that says max file size is 1 megabyte. It should be actually less than or greater than or equal. And we have an else here. We set the image, so this should be actually, it should be inside actually, so let's put it inside, just down below here. And the same for the handle sign up, should be inside the sign up here. So we say set image is going to be the file, and we say set image preview now is going to be, so URL that create object URL coming from the file, so that we can see what we want to upload. Right, so let's see now. Oh, thanks. If I try to add an image, right, so here we actually need to have, so it's, if there is some preview image, so we need to show it by saying here image, so image preview, or if there is no image preview, we just show the bot image. So let's see, you see now, okay, this is the image preview, right? So yep. Now let's deal with the handle sign up. So before we sign up, we want to check, so if there is no image, we don't sign up. We say we return with an alert that says please, so upload your profile picture, and we say const. Okay, now if there is an image, URL equals, we await a function that we call, so upload image with the image, and this function is going to be, so let's put it here, function upload image, and we say it's an asynchronous function by just having the async here, and we say const data equals new from data. What's going to happen is we'll upload the image to Cloudinary, which is an API, and I'll show you how it's done. So we create the from data, and we say data.append the file image with the image, and we say data.append. We need to have an upload preset. It's like a way for the API to know that it's actually you that is uploading it. So preset, and let's say here I have already a preset, but I'll show you how to create yours. Okay, like this. Now I'm going to open Cloudinary and show you how it's done. So guys, I'm on the Cloudinary website, and it's just a way for you to upload images and in other files, but here what interests us is to be able to upload our own images so we can have them saved to the database later. So I'm going to create my site. I'm going to log into my account. If you don't have an account, just make sure you sign up. It's free, and I'll see you on the other side. So I'm on my Cloudinary dashboard, and I'm going to just show you how you can create a preset and then upload images. So here, after clicking on settings, okay, so you click on upload, and this is where you will actually create an upload preset in your settings. So I can have an upload preset here. Okay, you can call it however you want. I'm just going to keep it like this, the default. I'm going to save it. All right. 1 second. So let's edit it. So make sure that it's unsigned. So if it is unsigned, it means anyone can just upload any image because it's a public app, right? So I'm just going to copy this, right? So make sure you copy yours because I'll remove mine at the end of this video. So this is your upload preset. That's what you needed. And now we'll try to say set uploading image to true. So now we are uploading the image to true, and we say let now res equals, we await the fetch, and the fetch is going to be https:// API cloudinary.com /v1 _1. Okay, and we say this is my username. I'll just show you how to get yours. Image upload. So your username will be there. If you go to your dashboard, you see your cloud name here. This is what you need to have. This is my cloud name is this. For you need to go to your dashboard and you will grab your cloud name here. Okay, and that's what I put here. Okay, now let's add some info about our request by saying the method is a post method because we are trying to post an image, and the body is going to be our data, right? The data here. After doing this, we'll say const URL data equals, we await res.json, and we set uploading image to false, and we return the URL data .url. And now we'll have a catch after the try here, so catch, so that we can catch any error. So error, and we say set uploading image to false still, and we say console log error. If there is an error, we'll just log it to our console. All right, so now here after we await the URL, we can just say console log URL. So now let's try it out. Okay, so signup.js. Okay, so here it's actually async. So now let's just have an image here. Create account, and we can inspect our console, and you see that we get back the image. Okay, if I click the image, this is from Cloudinary, but it's like actually hosted on Cloudinary. Okay, so now it's working. If it doesn't work, make sure that you follow the steps again, so you can rewind the video. So after having the image, we'll have here later, so sign up the user. Okay, now here in the button we can have some animation to make sure that we are showing the user that it's actually doing something. So we say here if it is uploading an image, we say so signing you up, else okay we say just sign up. Right, so now if you have an image here we want to upload, so sign up, you see it says signing you up. It means that it's uploading the image. Let's inspect, and now we should have the image, the second one. Right, so it's working. Let's go back to the login page. So let's close this ones, and we'll give some state to our login page as well. So we can just look at the sign up, copy the state, so import here use state, don't have a name, right, just have email and password, and let's go back to the sign up. So copy this, paste it here instead of the email, right, and the same for the password. So copy and paste it here for the password, so like this, and you can go to the login page, close, and it's working now. So now we need as well to have functions for the login page. So we create here a handle login, takes an event, right, and we need to say that prevent default, and later on we'll have here some login logic. Now let's make this required, so we can say here required for the email and required for the password, so that we cannot just try to log in without an email. So let's try to remove this, and without an email. Okay, so it's fine. And now the form here on submit, right, we'll just call the handle login, so it doesn't submit the form. Let's say something here at email.com, so it doesn't submit. Alright guys, so now the last thing to build is the chat app, the chat page. So for the chat page we need to have actually components. So we need to have a sidebar for the chat, so RFCE, and we need to have a message form. Okay, so RFC. We come back here, not the sidebar, so the chat, and we'll have a container. So we import from React Bootstrap, and we import the container, row and column. Now we'll return, inside of this div, let's return a container, and within the container we'll have a row. So we'll have two columns, one for the sidebar component, and the sidebar should come from, so we say import sidebar from our components, and we have the sidebar. Another column for the message form, we say import from the components, and we say message form. Now the first one is going to be MD4, and the second one will be of MD8. So let's see now, if you go to the chat, so you have the sidebar here and you have the message form. So now the sidebar will have available rooms, and we'll have, so let's, instead of having a div, let's just have a empty brackets here for the fragment, and we have here h2, so available rooms. It's going to be a list group, so down below we'll have list group like this, and let's just create some variables here from now. So const rooms equals first room, second room, third room. Now we can say here rooms.map, so for each room has an index, and we'll just return, right, a list group that item with key, the key equals, so the index. Okay, from now, and we can have just a room here. So we'll have the available rooms like this. It will come later on from the database, and below we'll have our members. So another h2 members, and this is where we'll have our members, so we'll put it later. Right, so now let's build the message form. So here we'll have div is a class name, messages output. We'll have a form, and on submit, so we'll have a function that says handle submit. So inside here, so function handle submit. Takes an event, and we just say here e prevent default, and we call here the handle submit function. Within the function we'll have a row and two columns. So call the first one, we'll have md equals 11, and this will have a form that group. Okay, this is where we'll enter so the message. So from that control of type equals text placeholder, so your message, and down below the first column, so we'll create another column is md equals 1, and inside we'll have a button to submit. Okay, so say variant equals primary type equals submit, and let's give it some style here. So width is going to be 100%, and let's say background color, let's say orange. So for the styling, make sure that it's like double curly braces here, not just one single curly brace. And we'll have here an icon that says, so class name equals FAS FA paper plain, and let's see what we have. So we have this, right, and we have the message here. Now you can have it as a text area, but here, as I won't be putting a lot of text, so I'll just put it as a text. All right, so now let's have a div, or an outer div that will wrap everything, so like this, and the messages output will be just, we won't cover the form, so it will be there. So you have the messages output here, and we have the form to send the message. Okay, and you have an outer div. You can even make it a fragment like this. So the messages output, we need to style it. So let's say here message form.css. Let's link it. So import message form.css. And let's say here message is output, give it some height, 80 view height, border we say 1 pixel, solid light gray, so overflow y we say scroll, okay. So let's messages output like this. The border should be 1 pixel solid, and now you have it, right? So you have the available rooms, you have the members here. So let's just put some space, let's say here, so margin bottom 20 pixels, right? So we have some margin bottom here, and yeah, so we have it. And now the next step is to go back to our backend to set up our models and to link it to our database. Right guys, so now we need to connect our backend to our front end to be able to have anything about authentication and sending back enforced messages. But first of all, we need to set up our database. So I'm going to create here a connection file, so a new file, and I call it connection.js, and this is where we'll handle our connection. So for that I need to have MongoDB Atlas. So let's see how it's done. So I'm on the login page of MongoDB Atlas, and MongoDB Atlas is a database, okay, where you can just have your data for free. Okay, so I'm going to log into my account. If you don't have an account, make sure you create an account, and I'll see you on the other side. Right, so I'm on my cluster on my dashboard, and I'm going to create a new user. So in my network access, let's see the database access. So I'm going to create a new database user just to show you. So I'm going to call it Mern Chat YT user, and auto generate a secure password. And we can just so let's copy this. So copy the password back to our backend. So let's create here a file, call it .env, and that's where we need to have db underscore pw equals, and just paste the password here, and we'll do the same for the user. So this is the user, and we say db underscore user. It's going to be this user. So let's create the user. Alright, so while it's creating the user, we can go to our database and click on connect, and click on connect your application here. So now back to our connection.js file. So we'll have const mongoose, so require the mongoose, and we'll require as well so .env, the .env package .config, and we can say here, we can just paste, actually say, let's say mongoose .connect, and we'll connect with backticks here so that we can create variables, and the username here is coming from process.env.db underscore user. So we will extract them from this file, and the password as well. So we say process env db underscore pw for the password, and the database here you can just say anything, so chat app Mern, for example. Okay, so this is the connection, and once we have it connected, we can say console log connected to MongoDB. Okay, so this is once this is done, we can now go back to our server and we'll require the connection. So we say here require, right, the connection file, and let's test the connection. So npm run dev, and we have the connection to our MongoDB Atlas. Right, so now the next thing is to create our user model. So let's create a new folder this time. We call it models. Inside the models we'll have our user.js, and inside the user model, so we have here const mongoose equals, we require from mongoose, and we say const, right, so here from equals require from the validator, and we require is email function to just validate the email, and we say const bcrypt equals, so we say require bcrypt, and let's create a user schema. So user schema equals, so we say new mongoose that schema, and the name here for the user of type string. So we make it required with some custom message, so by saying true and say can be blank. Let's copy this. The email, so we say email of type string, lowercase, say true, unique, right? We say true, required. So let's just paste it. So index true, which means we want to retrieve the user by email. So let's just make it an index for faster retrieval. And validate. We validate it with the is email. And message, we say invalid email if the email is invalid. So next we have the password, type string, right? Say required. Let's just paste this here for the password. Next we have the picture for the user. So we say type string, right, for the picture, and we'll have a new message like this. So type object, and the default is going to be an empty object for the new messages. Next we have the status. Let's say here status of type string, and the default is going to be online, right? And now let's just say minimize false, so that we can have things like empty objects by default. If you don't have minimize, it will just strip it, and you don't want that. All right, so this is the user model. And we can now say const user, creating the user from the user model. So Mongo's creating the user schema, from the users. So you say Mongo's dot model user. Okay, so from the user schema we create the user model, and we say module dot exports equals, we say user. Okay, so now we are exporting the user model. So next is to create routes. So here we say routes. Actually shouldn't be a file, should be a folder. So routes, and inside the routes we say user routes for the user routes.js. So let's say const router equals, we say require express that router, import the user model by saying require. So from the models user. So here creating user, we say router dot post. So when we post to the user routes, it's going to be an async with request response, and here we'll say try catch. Let's remove this finally. So we say const try to extract name, email, password, and picture from the user. So request that body. We can say console log request that body just to see what we have, and after that we'll create a user by saying const user equals await. So we await user that create with the name, email, password, and the picture. And we say here raise that status, so 201 dot send that JSON, and we send back the user. It should be that JSON. Else, so if you have an error, so let msj create an empty variable, and we say if the error, so e.code equals, so 11,000. This is a code to say that the user already exists. So we say msj equals user already exists, else we say msj equals just e.message. Okay, so we say res that status 400.json, the message. You can just say here log the the error object as well. The next thing is to log in the user. So login user, we can say here router.post, so to / login. We'll have an async with request and response. Okay, and we'll say try catch as before. Let's put some space here. So try catch, and let's remove the finally. We don't want that. So what we'll try to log in the user by saying const email password equals request.body. So we try to extract it from the body object. So const user equals, we try to find the user, await user find by credentials. This we need to create it with the email and password, and we say user.status. Before we send it back, we say now the user is online, and we say await user.save, and we say raise that status of 200.json. Again, we send back the user. Else we just say raise that status, so 400.json with the e.message. So this is the login and the sign up, right, for our user. Now the methods here we have, so find by credentials, this we need to create it, and back to our user model, this is where we'll create it. So we say user schema that statics, so statics that find by credentials is going to be async. Okay, is function email and password. Let's say here function, right, and we say const user equals, so we say await user that find one. This is the process of creating finding the user by credentials. So if there is no user, if not user, we throw an error, so new error, by saying invalid email or password, and else we continue by saying here const is match equals, so we say await bcrypt that compare, so the password and the user that password. We need to have bcrypt here. Yeah, we have it already. And we say if is match, if there is no match. So what do we say here? We say throw new error, and we say invalid email or password. Okay, else we just say return user. It's like an if else, but we don't need to have if else here, because once it throws a new error, it just returns. So else it returns the user. The next one is, so here when we want to send back the user, we have two methods, that to JSON that runs. So we need to remove some things. So we say const user equals this, and we say const user object equals, so user that to object, right? And we say now we delete user object that password, and we return the user object. All right, so we don't want to send back the user's password. Another one is here. So user schema, that before we save the user, we want to hash the password. So we execute a function is a next middleware to go to the next middleware. So we say const user equals this, right? So we say if user is not modified, so if the password is not modified, we don't need to do anything. We can just return to the next middleware. Else, so we say bcrypt. Now we'll crypt the password that gen salt, and the salt is going to be 10. So we have a function is error and salt, the salt itself, like this. And we'll say if there is an error, what do we do? So we say return the error. Okay. Else we hash the password by saying bcrypt that hash, so the user password, so with the salt, and we have a callback function error hash. So if there is the error again, we return to the next middleware with the error. Else we say user that password now equals the hash. Okay, so we are just using callbacks here, and we go to the next middleware, right? So like this. So this is the function that hashes the password of the user's password before it saves it. So now we can test our routes, but before that, so the server here, we need to link it to our user routes. So we say here app.use, right? So let's say here const user routes. So we require from our routes user route, like this, and we just use we just use the user routes here. And let's see what we have. Let's append here the actual routes, so / users, like this. So we have some errors here. It means we need to say here module that exports equals our router, right? So now we have it running. So we can now go back to our app. Okay, so let's go back to our app. Let's close this. And one way to test our backend is to use Postman. So I'm going to use Postman to test our app. So Postman is a way to test your API, in this case our backend app. So I'm going to use here, create a new request. It's going to be a post request. So post request and HTTP, right? HTTP : localhost 5001, because our app is at 5001. So 5001 /users. Okay, and we will send here, so as our body, so we can just say here, so user email, right? You can have here email, so user at example.com, name, you can say user 1. So the password, you can just say password here. So this is what we are sending. Okay, so let's send. It says password can be blank, so we have a typo here. Send again. Right, user already exists. Let's say user 1. So we are having here the actual user with the ID, so it means our user is working correctly. Our API is working correctly. So it should not actually create the user if there is some issues with the password. But here we see that okay, it's creating the actual user, so we can test it out in our front end. Okay, so we can as well here say try to log in with the same email and the password. So let's just keep the password and the email, and we should get back the user. So let's send it. It says cannot post to login. Let's see why. So it's actually, one second, so here it should actually be /users, because we have the prefix here, that's user, so everything should be /users. So /users/login, and we have the user back, which is fine. Okay, so now we can test it out in our front-end app. So for the front-end app to work, we'll actually use Redux. Okay, we use Redux and Redux persist to persist our application, and we'll use as well a Redux toolkit, okay, to manage everything about making requests. So for that, I'm going to open my terminal here. We need to install npm I, so we say Redux. So Redux persist. We need to have as well, so Redux.js, so Redux.js/toolkit. Let's install these dependencies. Let's check as well if we have WebSocket here. So we don't have the socket, right? So we can say here npm I, so socket -io .io-client for the socket, for the WebSocket, right? So now we need to have here, so if you go to src, so in the src we'll create a new folder and we'll call it features, and another one still in the src, we'll call it services, so services. Alright, so the services is where we'll have our app API, so app API.js, and this is where we'll need to have, so here import from, so Redux toolkit, and we say /query /react. So we say we create an API and we fetch the base query for the fetch base query, and here we say we define a service using a base URL. So we say here const app API. This is to make queries, okay, to our database. So create an API, and the say reducer path equals, so we say app API, and the base query is going to be, so the fetch base query, the base URL, so http:/, so we say localhost 5001. And now let's define our endpoints. So the first endpoint, say here endpoints, takes a builder, it actually should be, so this is Redux toolkit. Okay, you can go to the Redux toolkit page and see how to build an app API. So it's actually a nice way to integrate everything in just Redux. We don't need to do any, we don't need to have any other let's say a fetch or a Axios. We just let Redux handle everything. Okay, and you see that it's actually a lot easier. So we have here the first endpoint is to sign up the user. So we say sign up user. So we say build a mutation. Mutation means it's like a post request. Everything that's like post request or a delete request, a post request, or let's say a patch request to update items. So it's a mutation, and we say here query. It takes a user, and it's like an object. Okay, so the query is, the URL is going to be, so URL is going to be /users. This is like localhost 3000, localhost 5001 /users, and we say the method is a post method, and the body we send the user. This is one endpoint. So let's say here creating the user, right? So below this one, another endpoint can have login. So login user is going to be a builder, still that mutation, and we have the query takes user like this, and we say the URL is /users/login. Method again is a post method, and we send the body, we say user. Okay, so we have our second endpoint. So let's see the second endpoint. So we have logout, right? So logout, we say logout user equals builder, actually, so builder dot mutation. Again, the query, it takes payload, some payload. So we say here the URL is /logout. The method is a delete method, and the body is the payload. Okay, so these endpoints, they give us now a hooks like functions that we can use to have access to these endpoints. So how do we do that? We just say export now const equals the app API, and we say here it gives us automatically names that we can use for each endpoint. So for example, for the sign up user, it's like use sign up user, you see it's created automatically. The same for use login user mutation and use logout user mutation. So that's what we need, and we can say export default. So export default app API. Okay, so this is the service. It's like our API that's going to make requests for us. Now the next step is, after creating the services, now we'll set up our Redux store. So Redux is a way to manage your state. We need to manage our state with Redux and not just with React. So we have here inside our SRC, so we have features. We'll create a state management for the user. We call user slice.js, and here we say import like this. We import from Redux toolkit, and it's going to be, so create slice to create our user slice, our user state. So we import app API, we need it to make our request, and we say here export now const user slice. We create the user slice now equals create slice, right, like this, and we'll give it a name, of course user. Initial state is going to be there is no user, we say null, and the reducers, these are going to be like the functions that will change the user state. So that's how I can explain it. Okay, so we'll have one to add notifications, and we say state, it takes the state, the previous state takes some payload, and we'll do something here later. Okay, just make it empty, and the same for reset notifications. So we say here reset notifications. Okay, now we have extra reducers, so we say extra reducers. These are extra reducers, and they are going to help us do more than just change the state. For example, save the state. Okay, so in this case we have one to save the user after we sign up. We save it in our storage. So we say builder. You say here save user after sign up. After we sign up, we get back the user. We want to save it. So we say builder dot add match here. So we wait for the app API endpoint. Right, we have the endpoint sign up user to fulfill. So we say match fulfilled, and we get back something, right? So the state, the user state. We have the payload. This is the actual user we get from the database, and we just return the payload so that it saves the payload as the new state. Okay, so we say here save user after login, and it's going to be about the same, so I'm going to just copy this, paste it here, but instead of having sign up, we have login user, right? So that's it. And we have destroy user session, so here logout, so we destroy user session, and let's paste this. So the endpoint is logout user, right? And after this we don't need a payload, we just want to return back null as the user. The user will be null now. So that's it for our extra reducers. And now we can say here export const equals the user slice dot actions. Okay, so the actions are coming from the reducers. We have add notifications, reset notifications. This is when we call this, is going to change our state. So, and they are actions. That's what we call actions, to change the state. They can only the actions can change your state. So we say here add notifications and reset notifications. That's it. And we say export default now the user slice that reducer. Okay, so that we can have access to the reducer. Now this, after doing this, we'll now create our store. So still within the src, that's where we have store.js in this case, and we say import from, right? So we say Redux toolkit. So we say configure store. The store is what holds our reducers as well as our state. Okay, so we need to create it. So import user slice, of course, because we need it. Import the app API because it's part of the state, the store. And here persist our store. This is to save it, so that once even if you refresh your page, it won't disappear. If you don't have it, you will have to log in every time you refresh the page, or every time you close and reopen your browser. We don't want that. We want to persist our state. So we say import storage from Redux persist storage. We need to have from Redux, so we need to import combine reducers from Redux. We need to import Redux persist, so it's called persist reducer. We need to import here, so actually let's npm I redux thunk. So redux thunk help us make asynchronous operations like signing up the user. It doesn't happen right, it doesn't happen let's say at once. It needs some time, so it's like an asynchronous operation. We need thunk to allow that. So we say import thunk from Redux thunk, and that's it. Now we have the reducers So const, we create the reducers, one reducer that's going to combine all our reducers. We say combine reducers because we can only have one reducer for our store. So the user slice, and if we use the command reducer, this is going to make it just one reducer. Okay, and we say here app API that reducer path is going to be app API that reducer. So we have the one reducer. We have here the configuration for the persist. We say persist config equals, so we say key is going to be the root. We have the storage, and let's blacklist now. We don't want to persist our reducer or app API. We say app API reducer path like this. So here let's persist our store. So here const, let's say persisted reducer equals, we persist the reducer with persist config and the reducers. Actually he should be reducers. Let's actually just say reducer here, just one reducer. So now creating the store. So const, now the store is, so configure store. Okay, we call it with a reducer. It's going to be the persisted reducer, this one here, and we say the middleware is going to be now the sunk, right? Because the sunk is a middleware, and the app API that middleware. Okay, this allows us to make asynchronous request. So let's say export default our store, and now we have the store, and let's say here persisted, and here persisted. Okay, so we have the persisted reducer here, and this is what we need here as our reducer. So now that we have built the store, we need now to integrate it into our app, right? So that's the last step. So back to our index.js. So we'll say here import from React Redux. We don't have React Redux, so we need to install it. So say here npm I React Redux. React Redux is what allows us to like a bridge between React and Redux, between our React application and the Redux. So we need to have here the provider, okay, the bridge, and we need to have here import. So from Redux persist, let's say integration React for React, and we need to have here persist gate, okay, to persist, and import persist store. So persist store from Redux persist /es/ persist store, okay, and the store. So import store from our store. So we have the store now, and this is where we render the React app, right? So we need to have it here. So let's say here const persisted store equals, we call the persist store with our store. And now let's have the provider now here as a component, and the provider will wrap the app. like this, and the store is going to be our store still. Now the persist gate, this is just to provide the store to our app. Now we need to persist it with the persist gate, and it's going to wrap the app again like this. And now the persist gate, it takes a loading. Say no, there is no loading animation. We say persist store equals the persisted store. So this persisted store, okay, this is the persist store is the persisted store. Make sure that you don't make any typo. So after doing that, we should have everything working. So we can test that by just inspecting, and we have the Redux Devtools here, right? So we can refresh. We have a user, right? And we have the app API and the persist. Now, to have this Redux components and profiler, you just need to install Redux Devtools. Okay, so make sure that you just install it from your Chrome store, or if you are using Firefox, install it from Firefox. It's just Redux Devtools, and you should have this icon here. You see, so it's called Redux Devtools. All right. So now that we have the user state, let's just see that it's like here. That's because I had a user already. Okay, but you won't have this normally because we don't have a user yet. So you can just go to application and delete. Right, so now we don't have a user, but we still have, right, the state here with no user. Okay, and we'll now, after logging in or after signing up, we will now have that user. Okay, so back to the login page. So we'll go to the sign up actually, and this is where we'll create our first user. So let's open the sign up page. Okay, so let's make it smaller. So you have the sign up page like this. So in our handle sign up, this is where we need to sign up the user. Now if you remember, in our app API, the app API was providing providing us with this function, so that's what we'll use. Let's close this. Close all of this. Just a second. Okay. Right. So now we have the handle signup. This is where we'll call that function. So we need to import it. So let's just import it here. I'm saying import. So from, we can say services, right? App API. It's going to be the use sign up user mutation. So it's a hook. It means it gives us like an object where we can have the sign up function and the loading, an object with the loading state. So here you can have const equals, so use sign up user mutation. It's a hook, so when we call it, it gives us a function that's called sign up user. So we call it sign up user, and we have another object, so is loading and error, just for the state of this request. So now we have the sign up user. So back to here, you can just say sign up user. So it takes an object, right, with the name, email, so password, and the picture is the URL, right? And after that, so that's then, so we'll have some data like this, and we can just say here, so if data, say console log data. Okay, so now we can try to sign up our first user. Let's say here second user. Let's just say Emma, for example. So open inspect to look at the network. So I'll click on sign up. Oh, we need to have a profile picture. So let's just have here, let's sign up. Right, so it uploaded the images, and now let's look at the console. And now you see that we have the image uploaded, and after that you see that the user has an email, the name, no new messages. Okay, no new messages, the picture for the user, the status online, the ID, and let's look at the Redux Store, and we should have the user state now, and you see that we have now the user state. Okay, and even if we have the payload here, even if we refresh, we'll still have the state for the user. You see that the payload here, the user, this is the user, right? So it's kind of saved because of the Redux persist. Let's now deal with the login. Do the same with the login. So let's close this one. So open the login page. So for the login page, we'll do about the same. So we need to import here. So import from the services, say app API. Instead of having the use login, use sign up, we use the use login, and we can say here const, right, as before, equals use login user mutation, and we have one function. The first one we call it login user. The next one we call it like it's an object, so is loading, and the error object if there is an error. So in the handle login, you can just say login user with the email, the password. So after that, that's then. So we'll have the data. So if there is the data, we say actually show here. We need to have the socket work here. We'll come back to it later, and we navigate to the chat. Okay. To navigate to the chat, we need to have the use navigate. So we say here it's coming from React.dom, so we have use navigate, and it's a hook, so we say const navigate equals use navigate, and after that we navigate to the chat. So we say navigate to /chat, and the same should be for the sign up. So here we say use navigate. So we say const navigate equals, so we say use navigate, and after we sign up, so we will navigate to the user. Right, so we say here navigate /chat, right, so we can test it out now. So after we say here, let's go to the login. We had Emma, I think. Let's log in, and now we have a user, right? So after logging in, we'll be directed to the chat. Right, so once we log in, we should not be able to log in again, so we'll hide some routes, okay, and we'll show other routes. So back to the navigation. Let's close this. So components, navigation, this is where we'll hide and show things. So the login here, we need to check if there is a user. So if there is no user, we'll show it, but if there is a user already, we don't need to show it. So we say here const now user equals use selector. Use selector allows us to have access to our state. So the state, and we just need to state that user. We just need to grab the user. Okay, so here we say if there is a user. If there is no user, actually we show it. So if there is no user, so let's just wrap this like this, right? So if there is no user, we don't show, we show the login. But if there is a user, as you can see, we don't show the login. Now right below the chat, we'll now modify the drop down so that if there is a user, we'll show the drop down. So we say user, and so we show the drop down like this. Okay, now we have the drop down only if there is a user. In the drop down itself, we need to modify it. So the title here is going to be actually a fragment with the image. We need to have the image for the user here. With src is going to be user.picture. Style, let's just say here width is going to be 30. The height as well is 30. Margin right is going to be 10. We say object fit, so cover with some border radius. So border radius, we say 50%. And after the image, so just below we have user.name. And now let's look at the drop down. So you have right here the user's name and the user's image like this. Right, so here let's remove this divider. So you can have here other actions, okay, if you want, but I'll have here. So for the nav drop down, the last one, we'll just put a button and we call it logout. Right, and let's remove this href, we don't need it. And let's say here variant is going to be just danger for the logout, and on click, right, it's going to be a handle logout. So we have here the function right below the user, so function handle logout for logging out our user. So for that, we need to import from the app API, right? So services, say app API, it's going to be use logout user mutation. We say here const as before, but equals use logout user mutation. Just need the logout user like this. And now the handle logout here, it takes an event, and we say e.prevent default, and we await logout the user, so it means this should be async. So with the user, and here we say window that location that replace, right, and we go back to the home page. So we say here redirect to home page. Right, so now let's see. So we have this user only if we are logged in, and we need to hide this, right? So the page as well. So back to our app.js. So as before, we say here const user equals, so we say use selector coming from React Redux state, say state.user. And for the login and the sign up, we say here if there is no user, right, we'll allow it like this. Right, so and then let's put a parenthesis like this, and we'll have a fragment here. We need to have a fragment to wrap the two routes. Right, so this parenthesis should be outside, it should be inside like this. Should be actually outside, so let's put the parentheses like this. So now we are hiding the login, right, and the sign up page. So now we have the logout. Okay, now the next step is to deal with the logout. Okay, so I'm going to deal with the logout, but to deal with the logout we need to have the socket.io established. So we'll do with that once we have the socket work. But from now, if you need to log out, you can just inspect, go to application and remove this so that you have a user again. We have no user again. So login, right, and now you have a user. So in this last part of our application, we will integrate socket.io and finish with messaging and the logout. So open back our application. And we'll make sure that if we don't have a user, okay, so we won't be able to have access to the chat or to send a message to the chat. So here in our message form, so we'll have access to the user by saying here const user equals use selector as before. So we select the state. From the state we grab the user, so state.user, and depending on the user's value, so we will show or hide items. So here in the messages from output, if we don't have a user, right, so if there is no user, so we say if no user, so we say div and this div will have a class name, so of alert danger, and we'll just say so please login. It's that simple. This is like an indication for the user. So let's inspect in our application, remove the user, refresh, and it says please login. The next thing is to disable the form. So in our form control, we'll say it is disabled if there is no user, right? So there is no user, so we can't send a message, right? In the button as well, so we can say here disabled equals if there is no user. So now we can send a message. You can just see the available rooms maybe, and that's it. So we won't even show the available rooms, right? So we go back to the sidebar, and this is where we'll hide the available rooms. So here we say just so const user equals use selector, so we say state and state.user, and we can just say so if there is no user, we just return, let's say a fragment, so that it doesn't return anything, right? So we don't show any messages, any rooms or any users. Okay, so now let's deal with socket.io for the front end and the back end. So we'll start with the front end, and for that I'm going to just create a context to manage our socket as well as some variables of our application. So let's create here in the src we can create app context. Let's just say context, say app context. We say import IO, we import it from socket IO client. So from, say here, import IO from the socket IO client. Import React, so say React, from React, and const socket URL equals, so the HTTP localhost, the backend, and the app context. We say export const app context equals, so React that create context. Now in our app.js, we can close this one, again. Let's close all of this. So we need to create, so const rooms, set rooms, use state, empty array. Another one, so const current room, set current room, use state. So the same for members, set members, let's say use state, const messages, set messages, say use state. So this will need it for our context. Const, so private member msj, set private member msj equals, say use state. In this case, it's an empty object, not an empty array. Const, so new messages, set new messages, we say use state. Again, empty object. Right, so we have this because we need the other components to have access to our these values. We'll just use the context. So for that, let's wrap the app context. Say here, actually say here import from the context, app context, and we import app context and the socket. Let's see what we have in the context, app context. We don't have the socket. Let's create a socket. Let's say export const socket equals, we say IO with the socket URL. So now we have it. Okay, the socket. We say app context that will wrap the browser router. And it takes a provider. So context dot provider. Same here. So provider, the value takes a value, and it's an object, right? So make sure that it's like double curly braces. So we'll just put the socket, the current room, set current room, members, set current members. So let's say set members, messages, set messages, private, basically everything that we have here. Set private member MSJ, so we have rooms, set rooms, and finally new messages, set new messages. So this is our value, right? So we can just carry it out like this so that we can see. Right, so this is we need to actually have all of this here, so in our provider, because the other components need to have access to this provider, to these values. All right, so now we can go to the backend. So here let's create app to send back the rooms. So app that get rooms, say request response, and we say res.json rooms. Right, so after that you'll have here socket connection, and we say io.on. So once we connect, we want to do something, so it takes a socket object, and this is going to be wrapping all our socket logic. Right, so let's say here the first one is socket.on. So message, let's say join room, first thing. So because we want to join a room by default, so async room takes the room, and we say the socket that join that specific room. So this is the socket coming from the front end, because each user will have its own socket. Okay, so once we join the room, we want that socket for the user to join that specific room, right? And now we need functions to get messages from the backend, and for that we'll create a message model. So const mongoose require mongoose, we'll say here const message schema equals new mongoose, right? That schema, and takes a content, going to be a string, from object, the socket ID is going to be a string, time the string, date a string, to a string, and we say const message equals, so we say mongoose model, create a message model with the message schema, and we module that exports equals message, the message object, because we'll save the message in our database. Right, so once we join the room, we want to send back all the messages from that spot, from that specific row. So we need a function. So actually here, so function get last messages from room, right, the specific room. And what we do here, we say let room messages equals, we await, and this should be so async, so we await message that aggregate. Aggregate is a function in MongoDB, so it means we want just to query the messages in a specific way, right? So by date actually. So we say match should match that specific room, right? And we group by date now. So we say group underscore ID, so date and message. So each date will have a messages by date object that will group all the messages. So we say just push all the messages. So say root like this. This will create for each date a group of messages, all the messages by that specific date. And I will call that function. Let's put here the push. So we'll return now actually. So let return room messages, right? So after we join the room, we'll say let room messages equals, we await, so get last messages from room, right? From that specific room. So we get all the messages by date. We need another function that will just order that by date. So we say function sort room messages by date, so all the messages. So we say return messages that sort, because we need to sort it in a specific way, right? So from the earliest messages to the latest messages. So function AB, so from the latest to the newest messages. So let date 1 equals, say A at ID, right? This ID here, which is the date, that split. Okay, let's split it. Let date 2 equals B ID split. So date 1 equals, so date, we'll just rearrange it, right? Because it's like this actually. So it's like months, so 02, day, year, like this. So we want to rearrange it so that we can sort it, because if it is like this we cannot sort it. So we want just to rearrange it so that we just have this. First we'll have the year, so we want to be like this, compare the year first and then compare the months 02 and then the day, so that we can sort. So this is the year, the second one, right? Plus date 0, this is the months. So first by date, then by months, say plus, and then plus date 1, date the first one, 1. So first by year, then by months, then by day. The same for date 2 equals, so we just redefine it. Let me just copy this, paste it here, and then we change date 1 to date 2, like this. And we just now write that easy. We just return date 1 if it is less than date 2. We just return -1, else we return 1. Okay, so now we are sorting it by date. Right, so now we can use that function. After we get the room messages, we can say room messages equals sort room messages by date, still with the room messages to have it, and we say socket now that emit. So we send it back to the client with an event with messages, because the socket WebSockets, they work with events. So we emit and we receive the message, the event. So this is an event, and then in the front end we listen for that specific event. Join room is an event, so we will send, because this is listening for an event, so we will send this event join room from the front end. So that's how it goes, right? So we can have here, if there is a new user, so we say socket at on, listen for new user, and we say async. It's just an event, and we say const members equals, we await older user, so find, and we say io.emit new user, so the members. io.emit means we will emit to all the users that are connected to that socket. io.emit. If we say socket.emit, it's only that specific user. For example, here we just want to communicate the messages to that specific user that wants to join the room. But here, once we have a new user, we want to inform all the users that we have a new user, so that they update their users list. All right, so now we can go back to the front end. Right, so you'll see here, so in the login, let's look at the login page. After we log in, we want to use socket, WebSockets. So we'll grab the socket from, so equals use context. We'll use the context, make sure that you import it from React, and we say the app context as well, app context here. Okay, so we have access to the socket, and once we log in, we will emit, right, the new user. Remember, here we have a new user, right? So we want to emit that, okay, there is a new user here, and then it's going to update the users list and send us back this. So let's go back. Now once we have this, okay, we emit the new user, the socket will as well send back, okay, the updated user, right? So for that we need to listen it in our sidebar, because that's where we'll update or we'll show the users. So in our sidebar, components sidebar, so again we say here const equals use context. We use the context, the app context, and we have access to the socket. After this, we'll say socket that off new user that on. Make sure that we have off and on new user. We listen for the new user, and we say payload, right? It's going to send us back a payload with the new user. You can just say console log payload, so that you can see. So why we are having off and on? Because if you just have on, it will keep listening to the message. We want to make sure that we switch it off before we switch it on. Otherwise it will have bugs. So the payload here, once we log in, so let's inspect, look at our console. So we have value prop is required for the context provider. Refresh. Okay. So let's log in. We have here user is not defined, which means we need to have the user server.js. So we need to have here const user equals, so we say require our models, say user. Alright, let's try again. So we'll log in again. Let's remove this, refresh, go to the login page, login, look at our console, and you see here we are getting, right, we are getting our users, so the ones that we created. Okay, right, so I actually had users already. It can be the database that had users already, but we have here some users, right? So now this, we want to show it in here, the available members, right? So for that, instead of having console log, so we'll grab here the set members. We'll grab the members. We'll grab the set current room. So set rooms, and the private, because we'll need it. MSJ, we need to have the rooms. So set private member MSJ and the current room. Okay, so these are what we need from our contents. Now instead of having the payload, console log payload, we'll just say set members, right, as the payload. Alright, so now here for the members, we just need to have members that map, right? And for each member, so let's just wrap it in parentheses like this. So we need to have a list group that will, let's say list group, actually should be list group dot item, list group dot item. So we is the key, so key, so member dot id, and style, you can say, let's actually give it some style. Cursor is going to be a pointer, and from now let's just say here, so member that name. We should have our members. Let's see what's going on. Room has already been declared, so let's remove the rooms, this one, right? So let's refresh, let's see what's going on. For each member, let's just say hello to see if you have something. I think we need to log out, log in again, right? So you have a bunch of hello here, and we can change it to just be member.name. Let's see what's going on. Oh yeah, so it's not saving the members. Let's see the app again, login. So we solved that, but I want to make sure that we can have, you see here it's showing the users names, right? So now for the rooms, so let's define a function here. So function get rooms, and we'll just fetch from HTTP, so :// localhost 5001 /rooms. So that's then when we get the response, we just say res.json, and that's then So we get the data and we just say set rooms, right, with the data. And now we'll use a use effect, right? So let's put it before. So let's say here, so the get rooms, right? So we'll have a use effect. Let's put it here. So use effect, the use effect. So we'll load it once, and we say, so if there is a user, right, we set the current room to be general room. By default, we'll join the general room. We get the rooms, and we say socket emit join room. We join the general room, general, and we say socket that emit, so new user. Right, so we're emitting the new user so we can get back the members. So now once we refresh, so let's see, should get the room, use effect, console log, it's saying failed to fetch. Let's see the backend, says message is not defined. So let's say here const message equals we require from models, so message. We can try again. Let's see what's going on again. Try again. Right, so we have the members, but we don't have the rooms. Let's see, network, rooms, response, we don't have a response, but it's saying 400. So let's see, so we have update get here. Yeah, so we have a typo, localhost 5001 rooms. Yeah, so I changed this and put it just below so that to separate it, but it doesn't matter. So here we have update get rooms, and you should have the rooms. So you have the available rooms now and the members. Right, so now let's deal with sending messages. Okay, so to send messages, we'll go to the backend here and we listen for socket dot on, so message room, and we'll say so async room content sender. We need the time and we need a date, and we say const the new message is going to be await message that create. We created with content, so from is going to be the sender, the time, the date, and to is going to be the room. So it should be socket, right? We create a new message and we say let room messages again. So wait get lot messages from room, and we say room messages equals sort room messages by date. This could be in a function, but because we are repeating ourselves, so you can put it in a function. I'm going to say here io dot to room. Now we emit so room messages just to the room messages. Okay, so we say room messages. Now after doing that, we send the message to the users. Now the users that are not in the room, they should get the notification. So we say here So sending message to room. We say here socket that broadcast that emit, so notifications to that specific room, from that specific room. Okay, so we need to emit to say that okay, there is a new message to that room, to the other users. So now we can test it out. So in the front end, in our message form, that's where things will happen. So let's open the message. Let's close this out, close it. So message form, we'll have here a state. So we say const message set message, say equals use state at use store. So it's like use state, import it. It's going to be empty string, right? So we need a function get formatted date. So function here, so const date equals new date. We say here let year equals date that get full year. You can say const year. So const month equals date get. So let's just actually say 1 plus date get month, because the month start with 0. So to string, and then we'll just remove the 0. Yes, actually add the 0. So say month equals, so months that length greater than 1. We say months, else you add 0 to the months. The same for the date. So const day equals date that get date to string. And you say day equals, so day that length greater than 1. If it is the case, we say day, else we just append 0 to that specific day, and we just return now the months. So plus forward slash plus day plus, so forward slash plus year, right? So it's like the format months, day, and year. So this is the date. It's going to help us format the date. Now let's say here const equals use context, and we need to have the app context. So app context, let's import it. So import from context app context. We say here we import the app context. Let's grab the user by saying here const user equals, so use selector user. So you say user that state, okay. So we can call here, so const, actually we have it already, so let's remove it from here. We can say here const today date equals get formatted date, right? So let's create now the handle submit. handle submit here, and this function takes an event. So we say e that prevent default, say const today equals new date. So here we just need to have the time, so say const minutes equals today get minutes, right? And if it is less than 10, we'll just append 0 plus today get minutes. So else we say today that get minutes. The next one here, so const time equals today that get hours. So plus say this and plus minutes. Okay, so we grab the time, the room ID, so const room ID equals the current room, and the current room is coming from here, so we say socket current room, so set messages and private member messages. We will need this later, but here we just have the current room as room ID, so socket that emit, and we say message room, right? So once we submit to send a message, we'll emit this message room with the room ID, the message, the user, the time, and today date, right? This should correspond to, when we look at the message room here, we have the room content, sender, time, and date, right? So we have the room ID, the content, the user, the time, and date. So that's it. And after that we set message to be empty. Now the form here, so we have the handle submit, right? Now when we want to, let's say here for the form control, so the value is going to be the message state and say on change, so we make it just a control form. It takes an event and you say set message that target that value, right? So here in the send message handle submit, so if there is no message, so we say if message, we just return, right? We don't want to send an empty message here to the backend. So refresh, let's see what's going on. Message from line 15, so here should be left and here should be left, right? Let's refresh. Yep. So let's see here what's going on. Console application. So let's log in again. That shouldn't send this, shouldn't say this. We have a user, right? So let's see. User selector user. Yeah, so it should be user state that user. So state that user. And should be here state. Okay, so now we can send a message. We have a user. Let's say hello, and when we send the message, it should come here, hit the socket, and broadcast to back to the whole IO. So let's say message room, say here log new message, and let's say content to make sure that it's hitting the socket, right? So let's say here message from user, send, and you see here it says new message from user, right? So this is the content, right? So we are having it, and now we should listen for these emit room messages again, so that we'll reset the room messages. So here you can just have it here. So say socket dot off room messages dot on. You say again room messages. So grab the room messages, and we'll just set the messages now to the room messages, with the room messages. So we can say here console log, say room messages, and the room messages, so that you can see. So let's inspect console. Let's say hi world, and you see that we have like stream room messages, and this is the aggregate function gives us this messages by date. So you have this, it was by date. Okay, so my database actually had previous messages, that's why you have different dates here, but for you should be just one entry, and for each date you have the messages by date, like this. We can now deal with the logout and showing the messages for each room. So for the logout, we'll go to the backend, and right below the message room, so we'll say app.delete, right? So still within the socket, so app.delete, so we say logout, and it's going to be an async with request and response, and we say try catch, so try catch. So we'll just remove this, and we'll try, so we say const equals request.body. So we'll grab the ID and the new messages from the request.body. Say const user equals await user, so that find by ID. So say user find by ID, and we'll find it by underscore ID, and we say user.status equals offline, and we say user.new messages equals, so the new messages, because now this new messages is coming from the front end, so we need to save that state. So we say await user.save, and we say now the new members, so const members equals await, so user.find, and we say now socket that broadcast that emit, so we'll emit to the other users, new user still, just to refresh it with our updated members. And say res that status, so 200 that send. So else we can say console log e and res that status 400 that send. Right, so this is the logout, and in our front end, Let's look at our app API. So in our services, let's close this app API. So we have here the endpoint, and now we are going to log out from the navigation. So components, navigation. So here we have the logout user, we are calling it, and this button here, we are calling it here. All right, so this is the logout, and once we log out, so we can look at the features, the user slice. So we return null, we should return null. So let's test it out now. We'll just log out, and you see now, right? So we are logged out. Let's log in again, can try again. So log out, and it's working. The next part now is to show the message. So once we want to join a room, like to make a room clickable, and so that we can print the messages, right? Show the messages and send the message. So back to our app. So let's open the message form.js. So here in the messages output, this is where we'll output the messages. So here we can say if there is a user, right? So that's when we will say messages that map. So this message is here. So we say messages that so map, and a message will have, so parentheses here, an ID that's going to be the date, and now the message is by date. Right, and it's going to have an index after that, so IDX, and we need to have, let's see here what's going on. We want to return, we'll have a div, so div like this, and the div will have a key that's going to be the index IDX, and we'll have a paragraph with some class name, so class name, and we say alert, so alert dash info text center, so message date indicator, and we'll just have the date here, so date for each date, right? So for each date we'll just show the date and then all the messages at that specific date. So we'll say, so messages by date now, which is an array, that map, so let's check that if it exists, so that map, and so we'll use this structuring by saying content time from is going to be the sender, and outside this we'll have the index. Okay, so make sure that you have it like this. Let me just zoom in so that you can see. So we have the messages array, which is an array. For each object we extract the date, and for each date we'll look through the messages. That's why we have it like this. So what we'll have here, so we'll have a div, actually having some issues here, let's see. Can be, it's error prone, unfortunately, so we need to be careful with the way that we wrote it. So we have content IDX, and should actually be here inside, right? So like this, and instead of having curly braces, we'll just return a div, like this, and this is where we'll have the message. So we'll have an incoming message or the actual user message. So we say the class name equals, let's say, message from now, and the key, so we say key is going to be the IDX again. We can just say here MSJ IDX just to differentiate them. So MSJ IDX. So this is a message, and the message will simply hold so the content. Let's say here some paragraph, and we have the content like this. And in the first one here, okay, so let's remove the curly braces, and it should be actually just parentheses. Let's put parentheses here. Remove this. Right, so now you see that it's for each date it's just showing the message. So I admit that, like, actually it's actually complicated a bit because we have a map within a map, but just take your time and make sure that you have it correctly. I'm going to zoom in again, so you see that this is the first map is here. Okay, so we need to make sure with you need to pay attention with the parentheses and the curly braces. We are using this structuring here, and we return a div, and then this div we have the date, and for each date we'll just map again. Okay, so that's how we do it. All right, so we are just showing the messages from now, just to make sure that we can get the messages, and we'll come back to it for the styling purposes. Now we'll open the sidebar so that we can join a room or talk to an actual person here. So for the available rooms, so after having here for each a list group, so we have list group item with a key, and we need to have an on click so that we can click on it. So it's going to be join room. So we need to have the join room as a function. So we say here function join room takes a room, so is public for a public or a private room. A private room is when we want to send a private message to a user. So by default it's true, so it's public. So we say if there is no user we cannot join, so return alert. We say please log in. So else we just say socket dot emit. So what do we emit? A join room event to that specific room, and we say set current room. Now it's going to be that specific room. If it is public, so if is public again, we'll just say set the private memory message to be null, right? And this is where we'll just dispatch for notifications. So we'll do it later. And we say here, actually let's just stop here and let's click, so we can, you see now we are kind of joining the rooms, but we need to style it. So down here the list group item, we can say style equals, so cursor is going to be the pointer, display we say flex, so justify content we say space between. And now this room, so for the room say current room, if it is not equals to the room, so we say span, have a span here, and this is where we just have our notifications. So we'll look at it, right? So now we can click a room, and we'll make it active here by saying, so active equals if only if the room is the same as the current room, so we'll make it active. So now general room is active. If you click on tag, so let's say if you click on tag, tag should be active actually. So let's see what's going on here. So here we want to join a room, right, with that specific room. So we say room, and let's click on tag. You see that we are we are not able to join the room. Okay, join our different rooms. All right, so if I send a message here, so hello, you see now, right, we have something. If I do it for the finance, hello finance, so you see it says hello finance, and the same for crypto, so hello crypto, and we are having it. Okay, the next thing is sending private messages to a user. So to do that, we need to work with the handler this private member message and the set private member message. If there is something, which means if there is a user as a private member message, this is going to be a private member message. So we need to work with that to message a member. So we'll say here it's going to be an active if, so private member message that you can just check it if with an optional chaining. So that ID, just to make sure, equals there is a member that underscore ID, right? And we say on click equals, so we have our function. So we say handle private member MSJ. We'll create this function with the actual member, and we say disabled if and only if, so you can't send a message to yourself. So member dot underscore ID equals a user dot underscore ID. So this function doesn't exist. Let's create it. Function handle private member message, and we'll say join the room. So the room will be a combination of the current user and the user you want to send a message to. So that's how we will do it. Let's see, you see here we can now join a user, a room, but the second user here is actually disabled because it's the actual user. So once we have this, we need to generate like an ID for that specific room. So to do that, we simply order the two IDs alphabetically. So we create a function, simple function alphabetic. So order IDs. So it takes ID1, ID2. This is just for consistency. So no matter if the ID, let's say ID2 wants to send ID1 or ID1 wants to send ID2, it will be the same room. So if ID1 greater than ID2, so we'll say return ID1 plus, we'll add just a hyphen plus ID2. So else we return ID2 plus hyphen plus ID1, so that we have some consistency. And here you say const room ID now equals the result of alphabetic, so say order IDs with the user that underscore ID and the member that underscore ID you want to send a message to. We'll have a consistent ID, join room, and we join the room ID, and we say it's not a private, it's not a public, right? So remember here we say it's public through by default, so we say it's not public, it's private. So now we can join a room, right? This is a room. We can join the general room, public rooms, and we can join private rooms like this. Right, so I can send a, let's say, first user here, say, hey, what's up? And you see that, okay, it's showing. So we'll come back to the styling for this, but I just wanted to make sure that you can send a message and see your actual message. Hi guys, so it's me from the future. So unfortunately, in what's going to follow, so I have audio issues or mic issues when I type. So you will notice that you won't hear when I'm typing, right? So don't worry. So I have some text to guide you, and you can just by just looking at my screen, so you will be able to follow up pretty much with what I'm doing. And yeah, so let's go. So let's deal with now with the notifications in this last part. So for the notifications, it's actually simple because we have already something to handle that. So if you remember in our features here, so for the user slice, so we have something to deal with the notifications, and now we'll start with that. So for the add notifications, we can just say if state that new messages, because the notifications will be in the new messages. So payload, we say state that new messages, so payload equals, so state will just increase every time we have a new messages, payload, so +1, right? And else, so we'll say state that new messages, so payload equals 1. So this is to add notifications, and the reset notifications, we just delete state that new messages, the payload. Okay, so it's actually simple. So back to our sidebar, so we'll import them. So import from, so features user slice, and we'll import add notifications and reset notifications. Now in our join room, so once you join the room, we want just reset the notifications, right? Because you joined the room, so we'll just reset it. So we say dispatch, and we'll dispatch here by using, so const dispatch equals, we call a function, we call use dispatch coming from React Redux. Okay, so dispatch allows us to send an action to call these add notifications and reset notifications. So we'll say here dispatch reset notifications for that specific room, and we listen for an event, so socket that of, so of notifications that on notifications. So we listen for a specific room, and we just dispatch, so add notifications to that specific room. Alright, so now let's look at the backend here. For the backend, every time we have a new message, right, we have notifications. So that's how we do it. I'm going to open here right, so we are in the chat, and I'm actually going to send a message to the tech and then wait for notifications. Yeah, but before that we need to show the notifications. So it's going to be in the message form. It's actually in the sidebar. So here, this is where we'll show the notifications. Right, so we want to show the notifications for the other current rooms. So we say here the span will have a class name of badge, so rounded pill bg primary. So if you are in the current room, we don't show the notifications. And we say here user, right, so we say user that new messages room, to show the notifications for that specific room. And we'll do the same for the user, for the private message. But let's just see here. So let's say I send a message to the tech room from another browser. So let's say tech. So I'm in the general room, and from the tech room I say here, so hello tech. I should have a notification. You see here it's like a message. A second, say here second message, and it should have another notification. So it's like two, right? So and once I visit the room, it doesn't show anymore. So next we'll show the notifications for the members, but for the members we need to show as well the image, right, for the member, and the name. So we have the name already, and the status. So for that, let's actually remove member.name from here, and we'll have a row, and we'll have the first column here, so call, and the first column, so we'll have an XS2, so class name equals so member status. We'll have the image, so img, src equals so the member, that picture, and the class name equals so member status img. And now below the member status img, we'll have so member that status. If it is online, we'll show an icon with the class name equals FAS, so FA circle. So sidebar dash online dash status, so online dash status, right? Else will show still an icon but a different icon. So we say class name still FAS, so FA circle, and sidebar dash offline dash status. Alright, so it's going to show, should show now the user. Let's see, refresh. It's not showing the user image. Oh, we need to save. So row and column, let's import them. So row, column, and we are having very big images, very big pictures. So let's create here sidebar.css, and we can have here member dash status dash img. So width 30 pixels, height of 30 pixels, border radius of 50%, and we say object fit going to be cover. So member status, say margin bottom is going to be 0. Position, we say relative. So sidebar dash online dash status, so we say color is going to be green, and sidebar dash offline dash status, we say color can just have a yellow color. So E3B, so 505, and we can say here sidebar online status and sidebar online status and offline status. So font size 11 pixels. So we say position is going to be absolute. So Z index can say 99, bottom 0, left 12 pixels. And let's link this to our CSS. So we can say import sidebar.css like this, and now you see that okay, we are having the user images. Some users they did not have images, that's why. But you see some users have images here, which is fine. Now in the sidebar, so after this first column, we'll create another one. It's going to be XS, so XS9, and we'll have the member. So this is where we'll have member.name. So you say member.id if it is the same as, so the user that underscore ID. So we have something that says you, right? And we have the member that status. If it is offline, you can just add some things here that says offline. Okay, so now we'll have something. So these users are online, but we have an offline user here. So it's going to be, actually let's put some space here like this. It should say offline, right? And let's see here if it's going to say second user should say you. So it should be member._id, and you see here it says you. But let's put some space, so inside the parentheses should be like this, and you see here it's you, right? And this one is offline. So you can send message to these users, and we'll have here, so a last column, still access equals this time 1, and for the notification now, so say span, class name, so badge rounded pill, right? And bg dash primary, and we say here user that new message is. So we'll grab the room by just saying alphabetic, or let's say the function here, so all the IDs, so member that underscore ID and user that underscore ID to get the room. Right, let's close it. Right, so now we'll have the notifications here. If I send a message, so let's say I send a message, let's say a message to this user, say hey, what's up, right? So if you open this, so we don't set a notification, we don't get the notification. Let's say here inspect. So we look at this issue, right? But we are logging here the state for the different users, right? So now what's left is solving this issue here. So let's say order ID is user new messages, user underscore ID, member underscore ID. Let's say here inspect to look at the user state. So the user state, so new messages. Let's look at the user state. So let's send a message from, we have second user, let's send a message to second user here. So just say hello. And see here if you have, yep, so we don't have the notifications. We are missing something probably here, right? But now we need to just style this and then solve the notification issue. Let's now deal with the notifications, right? So have a better logic for the notifications, because right now, even if you we are on the room, we receive notifications, we'll see the notifications here. So we only want to have the messages, right, if we are not on that specific room. So for that, I'm going to open the sidebar, and we put here this socket of notifications inside the join room. So we'll actually put it outside. So let's just cut it out from here, and let's paste it here. So it's outside, and we'll dispatch notifications only if, so we can say if the current room is not that room. So we'll dispatch, right, only at that moment we'll dispatch, which means I can only have notifications if I'm not on that room. So now I open Firefox here, for example, and I go to the tech room, and I can say, so let's go back to the general. So in the tech room, I can say hello, and I should receive the tech notification here. Right, but if I am in the general room and I have somebody send a message in the general room, let's say hello from general, I should not receive a notification because I am in the general room. So let's see, you see now we don't have notification. That's what we want. Now the next thing is to actually modify this, right? So that we know who sent the message and what time was the message sent and so on. So the details about the message. So we'll go back to the message form, minimize this. So instead of having this content, so we'll have a div. So let's say div. The div will have a class name of message dash inner. And within this message inner, so we have another div like this. So div, and the div will have a class name. We'll say deflex line items center and MB3 for margin bottom. This is a div. That's where we'll have the image. So we'll have img. The image we'll have, so the src is going to be, so we have the sender, that picture, and we'll have a style. It's going to be, so width. The width is going to be 35, the height the same 35, and we say object fit cover. Let's add some border percent and margin right of 10. So we are showing the user's picture, and below the picture we'll put the name. So we'll say here class name, so we say message dash sender, and we say the sender dash so underscore ID. Is it the same as the current user? So we can say optional chaining underscore ID. If it is the same, we say u, else we just say sender dot name. All right, so this is where we put the user's details, and below we can put now the paragraph. Just say content with some class name, so we can say message dash content, and below the paragraph, that's where we put the time. So class name is going to be message time stamp left, and the time like this. All right, so let's see what we have. So we have here the image. Okay, we are having issues. Let's say the time. Right, so we seem to be sending something different than the time, so we need to solve that. But for the image, so the width, the height, right, so we put it correctly, so height 35. So we have the user's image, the user's name, and the content. This will change it. Okay, and down below here we'll have so a div. This is for allowing automatic scrolling of ref. So we use ref references. We say message ref, and we'll create a reference. So we can say message and ref, and we'll create a reference here by saying const message and ref equals. So we say use ref. We use ref here, and we import it from React, and we use ref. It's going to be null. It's going to create a reference to that div, and let's create a function here. So function scroll to bottom. So the function scroll to bottom, it just takes the message and ref. So current, if there is a current, so optional chaining, scroll, so scroll into view, and we say here, so the behavior should be smooth, and we'll create a use effect. So let's say here use effect. After this, we say use effect, and the use effect will depend on the messages. So we say the messages array, not message but messages, and every time we create we modify the messages, we just scroll to bottom like this. Right, so now it should scroll to the bottom every time we send a message. So say hello, good morning. You see it's scrolling to the bottom. How are you? Right, it's scrolling to the bottom. That's what we want. We can scroll down here so that we can differentiate the messages. So here we just have message, but we don't want that because some messages will be incoming messages, other one will be your message. So the class name will actually change it. So to be so sender, if false if it is user. So user.email, like this. So we say give it a class name of message if it is the same as the sender, else we give it a class name of incoming message, right, to differentiate the two. And now we can just style it, so the message form, that's CSS. So we can have here message dash inner, give it a margin left of 20 pixels, so margin bottom 10 pixels, padding of 10 pixels, so mean width of 200 pixels, max width of 90%, so it takes a line left, mean height 80 pixels, so font can say 400, 1 EM, and we say sans serif. So display, you can say inline block, and border radius 10 pixels, and the background color is, so we say dash D 1 E, so 7 DD, just to choose like a blue color, like a green color, right? So we have this, the message inner. Now we can have here, so the incoming message, if it is incoming message, so message, and we say message now dash inner, you can just give it a background color of like a orange color, so FFDAB9, right? So we have the incoming message and your message. Now we'll put the, so incoming message, say display flex, and we can say justify content, so flex and margin right 20 pixels, right? So now it's on the right side, so you have this nice display. So for the message, so we have message timestamp left, font size 0.85, we can say EM, font weight 300, let's put some margin top 10 pixels, and the message sender now, so give it some margin bottom of 5 pixels, font weight, let's make it bold, right? So for the message sender name, it's kind of bold, and the hours here, it's less bold, right? It's kind of light. The message date indicator, so message dash date dash indicator, you can give it a width of 100 pixels and margin 0 auto. This is the date indicator here, right? So we can just say actually 150 pixels. And yeah, so now let's look at, so the date we are sending. Yeah, so here should be get hours as a function, right? That's what we were not having the actual date. So if I say hello, it gives you the current date. Okay, so yeah, so that's it. Let's look at here now. So when we send a message to a specific user, we need to make sure that it's there is an indication, right? So here we can say we have two cases. If there is a user, and so we are not having a private message, member message, that underscore ID. So there is no, it's not a private, it's actually a public room. So we have a div, so with a class name of alert, alert dash info. And we say you are in the, so the current room like this, like this. So this is like an indicator. So if you are in the general room, it should say you are in the general room. And if it is like a private message, now we'll have something else. So below here, still user and right. So we can say private member message underscore ID. So and if it is the case, we'll have here now. Let's add the parentheses. We have a fragment. And we have a div with a class name. The class name is alert, alert dash info, and conversation dash info. Right, and now inside, so we have a span that says your conversation with, so private member message dot name, and we can have an image. So actually should be, you can just say div. So here for the image, we'll just put img. So with the src, it's going to be private member message, private. So member msj dot picture. What's the issue? So private picture, and then we'll give it a class. We say class name equals conversation dash profile dash picture. Right, and now back to our CSS. Let's have here conversation info. Put some padding of 0, margin 0 auto, say text align center, so height 100 pixels, right, and then conversation dash profile dash pic, and we can have some width 160 pixels, some height again 60 pixels, object fit, say cover, margin, let's put some margin, so 10 pixels auto, and margin bottom 30 pixels, so say border radius 15%, margin left 10 pixels. Okay, so let's see what we have. If you look at one conversation, it's not working. So conversation dash profile that pic, let's see if it matches. Yes, profile pic, just profile pic. So now should, right, so this is the conversation, the private conversation. And yeah, so you have your application. So hello again. You can put smileys if you want, like this. Okay, and then if you send it to the general room, so the other people will receive it as an incoming message. right? So if I'm on the tech and then somebody sends something in the general, so I should receive a notification, right? And I can see that this is the message. So if I join the tech room, yeah, so let's try again. All right, so it's actually showing the general messages, so we don't want that, so we need to correct that last part. All right, so the reason why it was showing a message even from another room is because we need to leave a room actually once we join a new room. So for that, here we need, right, so to send the current room as the previous room, so when we join a room, and in our backend, so let me open the backend. So here we need to change this join room, right? So we take now the room and the previous room, and room we can just change it to be new room. So after we join, so we need to join the new room, but after joining the new room, we will leave, so socket that leave the previous room, so that we will leave the previous room, right? So we leave the previous room with that, and let's see here. So after we do this, so now it should work, which means, so if I am in the general room, let's see what's going on here. So it says room, so we need to have here new room, and let's refresh. All right, so if I log into another account, let's say as this user, and I send a message, so from the crypto room, so hello from crypto, you should get a notification, this notification. So we are not seeing it here, right? And only once we join it, so we see that it says hello from crypto. We can look at, like, let's say finance. Right now we don't have any notification for finance. So if I say here hello from finance again, we should get a notification for the new user, right? And we don't see it here, so that's what we need to do. And let's now check. So if we log out, so let's say I log out this user, we should see that the state of the user change. Let me just log out, and I should see it here. You see that it's changing. Let's go back. So let's log in again. Now the last part is actually to show the errors here. If I don't have a user, let's say fake user at email.com, and I say password, so don't save. So we are not getting any errors yet. So that's what we need to actually correct. So let's open the login page. Let's close this out. So see, let's open the login pages, right? And here, so we have this error. So that's what we need to have, and the loading state as well. Let's scroll down, and in the form group, so here we need to have something to say. So if there is an error, so we say have P with a class name of alert, and we say alert dash danger. It should be error dash that data. And in the text here that says login, we need to change it a bit by saying if it is loading. So we say we can have some spinner here. So spinner is coming from React Bootstrap, and we say spinner with some animation called grow. Else, so we have just login. So let's try it again. Right, so we have now the animation, and the error message, and we do the same for the sign up page. So sign up. So down below, so the image, that's where we need to show it. So we say error again, and so some paragraphs with the class name alert dash danger, and we can just say so error dot data. Right. So the error is coming from here, and the same for the loading state. So here we need to change it by saying if it is uploading the image or if it is loading. Right. So we can just say signing you up. So right now it's going to sign up the user and have this animation. All right, so that's it, guys. So let's see here. Login state. I can log in with a user. Let's refresh. Right, so that's it, guys, for this video. And you can even let's say add the functionality to update the picture or the user's profile, so it's up to you. I'll stop there, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button and share it with your friends, and I'll see you in the next video.